In Chapter 5 of Giving Reasons, Morrow points out that arguments that have a normative conclusion require at least one normative premise. Here, I want to give you a couple of examples of arguments for normative conclusions. I want to point out their descriptive and normative premises and offer this as a model that you can imitate for upcoming writing assignments. So let's consider first an argument that appears earlier in Morrow's book, the general argument of the Declaration of Independence, which goes like this. King George III has badly mistreated the American colonies, therefore the colonies should be free and independent of the king. Now our conclusion, the American colonies should be independent, is a normative conclusion. It uses the word should. But the premise that's been given us is a descriptive premise. The American colonies have been badly mistreated. What we need here is a hidden premise, which is a normative premise, something like colonies that have been badly mistreated should be independent of their sovereign. Once we realize that there is both a descriptive and a normative premise to this argument, we can evaluate the argument in two different ways. We can evaluate the accuracy of its descriptive claims. Are the list of charges given in the declaration, in the body of the declaration, accurate representations of reality? Has the king in fact withheld his assent from necessary laws? Has he failed to defend the frontiers, etc., etc.? Secondly, we can ask about the truth of the normative claim, or the philosophical or moral principle that's being appealed to back up the normative conclusion. Is it the case that colonies that have been badly mistreated in these specific ways and that have a political culture sufficient to make their own laws and govern themselves should be independent? So someone who is skeptical about the conclusion might reject the conclusion either by rejecting the descriptive premises or by rejecting or disagreeing with the normative premise. So a British or a French observer in 1776 might say, I agree with you that colonies that are mistreated should be independent, but I disagree with your descriptive claims. I think you're not accurately representing the relationship between the American colonies and the British Parliament and the Crown. I think that you're exaggerating the evidence or leaving out some crucial facts. Or I might say, as an observer, I agree with your list of facts. The king has badly mistreated the colonies, but I disagree with your normative premise. I think it's not actually true that colonies who've been mistreated in this way deserve independence. My standard for deserving independence is somewhat higher, and it hasn't been met. So those are two different ways that one might challenge the conclusion of an argument with a normative conclusion, either by challenging the descriptive premises or by challenging the normative premises. Let's go to a second example. Here's one that I've made up. Carlos is bad at time management, therefore he should not go to law school. As before, we have a normative conclusion. Carlos should not go to law school, but only a descriptive premise that's been given explicitly. Carlos is bad at time management. This describes some facts about Carlos, but it doesn't give us the moral principle that we require in order to draw this normative conclusion. The normative premise that's hidden should be pretty obvious. You've probably seen it already, is that people who are bad at time management should not go to law school. This is a claim about the way things should be, about a relationship between certain skills in time management and being worthy of or advisable to go to law school. I could challenge the truth of that, or I could ask somebody, give me an argument in favor of that. And you might give me an argument to back up that normative premise, making it the conclusion of its own argument, by talking about the way in which time management skills are necessary for success in law school, about people who failing out of law school tend to have poor time management skills. Take a look at some data about and some testimony about what kind of time management skills are necessary to succeed and thrive in law school. You'd also need a normative premise in that argument, something like, if you don't have the skills necessary to thrive at law school, then you should not go to law school. So there's another example of a normative conclusion which has both descriptive and normative premises backing it up in the argument. Here's a third example. In this case, I'm going to start with the conclusion. Here's the normative conclusion. Hate crime laws should be repealed. If I were going to try to construct an argument in favor of that conclusion, how would I do it? Well, I would need both descriptive and normative premises to pull it off. So my descriptive premises might be something like, hate crime laws do more harm than good to society in general. And my normative premise would then have to be something like, any law that does more harm than good to society in general should be repealed. Now, you might ask me to give a further argument proving either one of these two premises. You might say, well, what do you mean by harm to society in general? What's a good justification for believing that? Where's the data that would back up that claim? And that might be the subject of a whole nother argument to try to prove that descriptive premise. The normative premise then also would be subject to challenge and to further argument and proof. How could I establish that that principle, that any law that causes more harm than good should be repealed, is a true principle that people should embrace? Also notice that one might disagree with my conclusion that hate crime laws should be repealed, either by challenging its descriptive evidence, that I just simply don't believe that you've established that they do more harm than good, or by challenging the normative claim by saying that they may do more harm than good to society in general, but I think your normative premise is false, that it's not the case that any law that does more harm than good in general should be repealed. It may do enough good for a small subset of society that it's still justified in being kept on the books despite its overall harm to society in general. So what I've done here is give you a quick look at 3 different examples of a normative conclusion backed up by both descriptive and normative premises. I think you'll find this helpful for some assignments that are coming up in this course. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.